and welcome to Tayo Mini Reads, Reviews, Discusses, Monologues about everything and anything, and that's on period. Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. So, March was a pretty, I don't know, I was so busy at work. I didn't really have time to read as much as I would have liked. But funny enough, I was able towards like the last couple days in March, I was able to power through some books. And so I was actually able to read a lot more than I thought I would. But let's say like at the midpoint of March, I literally only read one book. But without talking too much, let's get into the books that I read in the month of March. So, I read 4 books in March of 2026, and I think out of the 4 books, I had one book that I really liked. I had one book that I definitely disliked so much. I actually wanted to DNF this book, and I think like I should have DNF'd it, but I was like, you know what, just keep going, see how it feels, because it's part of like a trilogy, or I don't know, maybe a trilogy or like a quartet. So I was like, just finish it so that, solidifies if you're going to pick up the next couple of books. And then, and I'll get to that book at some point. And then I read one that was kind of like a surprise read for me. I didn't really think I would like it or get into it, but I mean, it kind of worked. And I lost count, but basically you get the idea. One was really good. Okay, 2 were really good. One was a surprise read. One was like super bad. Let's get into it. So the first book that I read, this is not in any order, but first book that I finished in March of 2026 was The Butcher's Masquerade by Matt Dinniman, which is book 5 in the DCC books. Now, The Butcher's Masquerade was pretty interesting, right? They had this thing where they people in the dungeons are now being pursued by hunters who are, real beings, real aliens, creatures, whatever, that, come into the dungeon to actually participate in the crawl. Now, I don't want to give too much spoilers because again, this is a ongoing series and it's really fascinating. This is basically book 5, but I can give you like a brief synopsis. Is, the setting is like we're in, Earth, just as we are right now, but then he gets captured by aliens. And if you were outside, at some point you were saved because all the houses were smushed, and people got the option to either roam the face of the earth and just like make do with having no infrastructure or anything, or go into the dungeons and participate in something called a dungeon crawl, where you would have to level up between floors, different floors. So there's like 12 or 15 floors. I'm not sure exactly how many floors, but you got to go through each floor and you're basically ascending, right? So it was the first floor, second floor, third floor, that kind of thing. So is that ascending? Yeah, that's ascending. So you're ascending floors basically. So you got to make it to the 15th floor, and I think you're scot free. And I think Earth gets its independence back or something of that sort. Anyways, we follow Carl and his cat, Princess Donut, as they ascend the floors and try to basically stay alive till they get to the last floor. They have to work with different groups of people, and each floor, each floor they land on, they have to level up. They choose a race. They can be any species they like, and it comes with different powers. It's kind of like a role RPG kind of setup where you can basically see, the attributes of any object. You can know the attributes of any person, that kind of stuff. So that's basically like DCC in a nutshell. And so in this book, I think they were on floor 6, which is, again, like I said, the floor where outside participation is, allowed, and people can come in and actually hunt the crawlers, kill them, get points, that kind of thing. It's pretty twisted. But anyways, a lot of things happen at the end of the Butcher's Masquerade, because I don't want to say spoilers. So I'll just say a lot of things happen, and then, they lose a couple of people, and then we go straight to the next book, which is The Eye of the Bedlam Bride, where they are now in floor 8. And I'll leave that for if you read the book, so you see why they skipped one floor. But it's pretty good. I am actually I'm definitely going to try to catch up, because book 8, I think, comes out this year, Parade of Horribles. So I want to get caught up and just make sure I'm ready for when that new book comes out. I think sometime in the summer. But that's DCC. I mean, I feel like every month I'm reviewing one book because I'm really taking my time, but they're just so good. Anyways, the next book that I read, that I think this one was the one where it was a surprise. I know I do like these kinds of books, but this one was kind of like a surprise to me. Now, this is, and by the way, I'm talking about I'm Medusa by Ayana Gray. So I do like Greek mythology, but it's not just something that I've found that I've gravitated to in any in any recent time. So when it came out, I think it came out either this year or last year, maybe this year, I'm not sure. But anyways, when it came out, I there was a lot of good reviews about this book. Basically, this book is following the origin story of Medusa. You know Medusa in the story of Hercules, where she's like the head that turns a gorgon that turns people into stone if you look into her eyes, and she has serpents, like her hair is basically made up of snakes. But this was basically the story before she became the gorgon, and so this is not something I would say I'm familiar with. I'm familiar with the story of, Hercules and the Olympian. I don't even know, is it Hercules? Whatever the case. The Clash of the Titans. I'm sorry. That's the one I was thinking of, not Hercules. Clash of the Titans. So if you're familiar with that movie, what happens is, again, I don't know who can remember, but someone, basically kills Medusa and uses her head to turn, I think, one of the Titans into stone. Don't quote me on that. But basically that's kind of like maybe the scant knowledge that I have of Medusa is from that movie. And so I Medusa was kind of, fascinating to me, because I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't really know the origin story of how Medusa became, a bad character. So this was a great deep dive into Medusa's life, her family, before she turned into a Gorgon. Now, the one thing about mythologies, and maybe this is what kind of puts me off, is because it's slightly based on real, events, but with a lot of padding from whoever the author is, because the records, or histories, has some information about Medusa, but you don't really know exactly what happened to her. So the author, is able to fill in some of the gaps with her own interpretation of how Medusa's story came to be. So it wasn't bad, but for me, I find it really, like, I read books like this, and at the end I go, well, is that really what happened? Or, like, I'm always wanting to know, like, is that really what happened? Or how do we know if that's exactly what happened? Like, how do we know if you did justice to the story, But there's no way anyone can know, because there's literally no history anymore. Like, we don't have any history. It's pretty, like, it's pretty thin, right? So, but I would say it was a great attempt. I enjoyed the book. We follow Medusa from when she was really young. So again, YA, like, they're so dumb and annoying at that young age. I think she was less than 19 in the book. I can't say the exact age she was, but she definitely did some silly things. And when someone is doing it, you're like, come on, be for real. Like, don't do that, and then they do it and they're like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have. Yeah, you probably shouldn't have done that. So I Medusa was a surprising read, because I enjoyed it. The only drawback, and this is not on the book or the author or anything, the only drawback is just that question is this really what happened? And how do we know, or how can we ever know, the real history and the real story behind Medusa? So it was a great read. I enjoyed it. I definitely, I'm now like, maybe I should go back into Greek mythologies and retellings or whatever, but we'll see. Anyways, the next book that I read, now this was also another surprising read to some degree, because I haven't read any book from this author before. But again, I've heard a lot of good things about this book, and I was like, you know what? Let me try it. This will be The Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless. the first book in the Gael song quartet or books. This is a historical fiction at best. There is some fantastical or fantasy elements, but it's so soft and subtle. And the first book, I mean, I guess the first book doesn't really go into the magic that is being kind of introduced in the first books. And I heard, well, I read some reviews and people were kind of like, oh, it goes deeper into the magic in the next books because there's like 4 books. So just off the first book, it's more historical fantasy. So, and it's a Irish kind of setting. So it's based on the kings of Ireland and, whatever went on when they were, I think in the 1800s. So pretty old. So if you like historical fantasy, historical fiction, this is probably the best book for you. It wasn't my fave, but it also wasn't a bad book either, right? It's just so worthy. It's so mouthy. I don't know how to explain it. Because when you're saying historical, it's really historical. It kind of almost reads like a encyclopedia or something of that sort, right? But we follow I think we have 2 points of view, which is Fodla and Gomla. Now, Gomla and Fodla are the 2, let me say, like superhuman humans in the book, basically. So Gumla is from a race called the Fomorians, who have this thing called the fire magic that basically extends their life cycle, and they can live to 300 years, if not more, right? And then on the other hand, we have Fodla, who is part of this, like, I want to say like monk-ish kind of crusader vibe set of people. I don't. They have this name, the Tuats Adain. I'm not saying that correctly, but you get the point. So the Tuats people versus the Fomorians, right? Now the Tuat people are basically crusader monks who are basically their whole existence is to kill the Fomorians. And so this is it's basically like a yin and yang kind of balance thing where you have this group that keeps this one in check, and it's like a battle that has been going on for years, centuries. It's not new, right? So the 2 parties know each other. Now the thing that makes this I guess complicated is the fact that each person, right, the Fomorians or the Tuatsan, look just like humans. There is no way to distinguish if they're, the supernatural person or like a human person. You would have to, I guess, be in close proximity and observe, right? And to some degree, you can kind of detect magic in a person, like the fire magic. So basically, Gumlat, we get introduced to her. She's married to the king of what was it, Dublin. He dies, and she has a son, and she's trying to make sure her son succeeds and becomes the next king. Her mom is passing and tells her, hey, you got to watch your fire magic because you don't want the Tuatatan people to be onto you, right? So your goal is to be stay relevant for like a couple of years, then fake your debts, go somewhere else, start a new life, and repeat, so that way you can evade the Tuats people. I keep saying Tuatat people, basically. So Gomla is like, oh yeah, sure. She doesn't do that. Like, she definitely does not do that. And so that's kind of like one POV that we follow is Gomla and all the stupid decisions that she makes. One thing I have to say, she was so annoying with her son. Like, she was so like, she was like a helicopter mommy. Like, everything was just come, my son. I'm like, girl, get a grip. So that's Gomla, and she's actually a very unlikable character. So you're not gonna really warm up to her. I don't know if it changes in the book. Again, it wasn't unlikable to the point where like I was disgusted by her, but I just was like, yeah, this is not the kind of person I would root for, even though her people are basically being hunted down and killed by the Tuatadan people. But she was basically a bad person. So I was like, if you die, like, you die. And then we follow Fodla. Now, Fodla is one I'm more like connected to. Fodla is someone who is basically, I won't say brainwashed or manipulated, but she is someone that has had a certain idea of things, but this is a perspective that is influenced by the people around her. So she's sent on a mission to try to infiltrate one clan and see if she can gather, whatever plans they have, you know, for the coming months, years, whatever. Anyways, so basically she has to go live with the humans. And all she has ever heard about the humans from one point to the other is that they are bad, they like war, they are savage, they're this, they're that. So she really goes with this biased point of view about humans, and she doesn't trust easily. But you can see over the course of the book how her stance is changing, and she's now growing into herself and realizing that, my perception was wrong. Like my perception about the humans was wrong, and maybe they're not so bad. So I really liked Fuddler's story where, she knows she's like becoming coming into herself, and it's really nice, the way that story is unfolding. So if not for anything, I think I would definitely want to go into the next book in this series, just because I really enjoyed how Fuddler's story was being told. I didn't really care for like the whole history, and there were a lot of names, and these are Irish names, so it's really hard to pronounce. But there were a lot of names, and I just couldn't keep track with. There were a lot of kings too, a lot of kings, a lot of names. So that part was a bit convoluted for me, even as technical as I am in reading. So you can imagine this is not an entry level kind of book whatsoever. It's literally like hardcore, like you're studying from it for an exam. But I definitely want to go into book two, and I will pick it up at some point. But I definitely feel like, book one was really good and I enjoyed it. And it didn't really end on like a cliffhanger. Maybe that's why I'm not so eager to jump in, but it ended with like a promise of, more things coming. So we'll see. So now let's get into the one book that I read that was such a horrible, well, I would say it was a horrible character that made me dislike this book. I don't think I've ever read a book that enraged me as much as this one, and that would be Spark of the Everflame by Penn. Now, this book is something of like a TikTok darling, up in the same realm as, Iron Wing or Iron Flame, whatever, the pop fort wing, and, other kind of like Insta book darlings or book talk darlings. And so I have been seeing Spark of the Everflame float around for about a while. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should read it. So I got it on my Kindle and I started reading it. It wasn't bad, but there is a character, basically the main character. What's her name? I forget. Maybe Diam or DM, whatever. DM is sort of something like a chosen one kind of thing. That's basically how the book is she is on this journey. She used to have some visions or something, and so she has to take something called flame root. But she didn't really know what the flame root was all about until she stopped taking it because her mom went missing, and her mom is the one who supplies her with that thing. And so when her mom got missing, she stopped taking it. And then she started realizing that, she started getting irritable. She was annoyed. She was like, you know how someone's like, let me at him, let me at him. Like she was always ready to go. She was always wanting to get into a fight. So basically, you could kind of infer that the flame root was suppressing all of her, the the powers or the things that was whatever was wrong with her. And so I would give the story like a point, right? Because even when she was acting irritated or irritable, I knew it was kind of because of the flame root, but to some degree, I think that some of the decisions she made was all her and not really like an attribute of the flame root thing. And so I was like, yeah, you're basically like so I just I think it was a character that's just not fleshed out. She's just so wishy-washy. She's here and there. She doesn't like one point she's like, I'm a healer, I want to heal people. On the next point, she's plotting to kill people. I'm like, girl, like take a freaking side. She doesn't have a fundamental like core. That's basically how I would say. She's basically just like existing. And so for me, that's a huge failure as a character, because if your setup is not, you have to go one way or the other. Now, if you are, you're one way and you're trying to maybe flip to another way, like let's say you're a healer and you're trying to flip to something else, I can understand. And if the author gives me a very compelling reason as to why this character is changing their core values, I think it makes sense. It's possible. It's not like unheard of, right? But for DM, it was just like, before she was on the flame root powder, when she was on the flame, she was level headed, behaved herself. And immediately she got off that, she just like basically went off the railing. So, and then she was so conflicted about everything that she did. And she never could like, I don't know, she never could like agree in her mind that, oh, I did the right thing. I don't know if that makes sense. So for that, I immensely detested her character. And I know I just kind of went into the DM character. I didn't even say what the story is about. But basically, we have this world where there's this human, I think it's like a human world, right? And then they are conquered by these people called maybe the ascended or descended. I honestly, I didn't even really keep track of the story, but basically there's this group of gods that come to their planet because they destroy their gods. They merge with the humans and they give birth to something called the ascended or the descendants, whatever. And so the original conquerors die, but their descended children are left to rule Earths, and there's 8 of them. Again, it's so confusing. There's 8 worlds in this one world, or 8 states. Let me say 8 states. So there's Amarion. There's a lot of them. I can't remember, but there's like 8 of them. So, and each state has like a different thing they're known for. One is known for wisdom and like, university kind of like knowledge, learning. The other is for war. One is for drugs. It's just, I'm really generalizing here, but you get the idea. Anyways, DM lives in the human part of her world, Marion, and she's a healer where she works with her mom in the clinic, and her mom attends to the ascended people in their palace and castle, whatever. One day her mom goes missing, and then like I said, her mom provided her with this flame root powder. And so because her mom was missing for like 6 months, she starts to question everything, question people. She gets off the flame root, and then things start to take a turn because her brother is going to an ascended school, and her mom was working for the ascended people in exchange for, the son going to the school. So she feels like, hey, my mom's not here. I have to step up and take care of my brother. So she kind of wants to assume, all the things that her mother was doing, even though her mother explicitly told her not to, get involved with this ascended people. Again, it could be descended, ascended. Don't quote me on that, but they're ascended something, anyways. So that's basically where the book starts from. There's a lot of dialogue where DM is just going back and forth. Oh, but why is this? Oh, why did I do this? Oh, but should I do this? Oh, they have to pay. And you can, it's just a lot. Like if they cut out that dialogue by like 20%, maybe it would have been better. But I guess the author was trying to explain how DM gets to where she is from the start of the book to the end of the book. But to me, like I said, DM is someone that doesn't, in my opinion, have any core values or fundamental values that she holds. That there's a couple ways to it, right? If you are someone that has a core value, you have a line, and as long as you don't cross that line, you're good. Now, if you cross the line, right? In this case, she was a healer. That's her line, is I need to heal people regardless of who they are, right? But then you see that she actually, it's like the Hippocratic oaths that doctors take. I will do no harm, right? But then you see her essentially breaking that oath. And this is not like mistakenly, she purposely does it, right? So yeah, no, it just, and then So so again, I almost DNF this book. Basically, we just follow her losing her temper, losing her mind, fighting with her whole family. I'm just like, what the heck? Like, what are we doing here? Anyways, she joins this cult of people who are trying to fight the Ascended, and then she's like, yeah, I don't like you guys anymore. I don't want, you see, like, she's so flip-floppy and just like all over the place. Right to the end of the book, she's like, yeah, I don't want to be a healer anymore. I've already hurt people, so I'm not doing this. I'm just like, girl. But yeah, so I struggled. I finished the book, and then I went on to, because I knew I wasn't gonna pick up the second book. This is like a 4-book series, and I was like, yeah, I'm definitely not picking up book 2 because I did not like anything about the story. The world itself was okay, but there wasn't anything special about the world building, right? Anyways, I did go on to read reviews of book 2, book 3, and maybe book 4 comes out this year. I'm not sure, but I did read reviews from book 2 and book 3, and everybody was just like, yeah, DM made some horrible choices. She wasn't likable. So I guess it was really the same things in book 1, but it became worse in the other books. So I was like, yeah, I think I'm justified in not continuing on with this series, and I will be better for it. So if and I say all this to say it's not a bad book, but just for me, if a character is just not really fleshed out and there's no rhyme or reason to what they do or why they do things, it just makes me hard to kind of follow the logic of the character. Like in the Children of Gods and Fighting Men, like Gumla. Gumla is not a good character, but I can definitely understand her motivations and why she is the way she is, because she's only known one thing is I have to be on guard because this Tuat's attend people will kill me. So she's on her guard every single day and she will kill someone to protect her secret. So I'm like, that makes sense. That's her motivation. That's her core values is, she's merciless because if she doesn't do it, she will die, right? So I'm okay with people that have self realizations about who they really are. DM does not have that. She does not know who she is. She literally is everything that happens, she blames someone else. Like she is just like is the worst. And it might be again because it's YA. That's one of the reasons why YA is just not for me at some points, because I feel like the age, the mindset of, the characters at like 18, 19 is just rebellious and just not very smart, right? Which I mean, it's not bad. It's just I have little patience for that. I just prefer like a more mature character. But I mean, those are all the books I read in March. I read 4, which typically I kind of average 5 to 6 in a month. So I mean, still wasn't bad. So let's see, maybe next month I will do better. But I mean, these were good top reads. I definitely found some new favorites that I will be continuing on, and I have one that let's basically call it a DNF because I DNF the whole series, and I just read one book in it. But anyways, thank you for watching and listening to me yap. Let me know the books that you read in March. If you read any of the books that I talked about, did you like them? Did you not like them? And also, what do you plan to read for the next coming months? But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Until then, bye.